wash your hands with me. I want to wash my hands with you. Come on, I will show you what to do. Wash your hands in clean water. Wash your hands, wet them with the water. Wash your hands, now add some soap. Scrub your hands in the soap and water. Scrub above and below between the fingers too. Scrub under your nails and scrub-a-dub-a-doo. Rinse your hands in water. Rinse them clean, rinse away the soap. Dry your hands and go.
Achille, why do we wash our hands?
To wash away the germs.
Achille, what are germs?
They're like tiny little bugs on your hands, and they can make you sick.
But I don't see any germs on my hand.
That's because they're so tiny that you can't even see them.
Oh wow! I want to wash the germs away. Will you wash your hands with me, Achille?
Of course!
Shushu, wamesema hakuna harusi.
Kwa nini? Hapana, haiwezekani. Mamisa harusi lazima itaendelea.
Pikia Brian record tustrimiwe do.
Nasema Safaricom iko na 500 MB free kila siku. Sasa tunaweza kustream hii wedo.
Hi Shosho.
Get 500 MB free kila siku and never miss a moment.
This is NTV.
Good morning, East Africa, and from wherever else you are joining us from. Now, this is Your World, an opportunity to interrogate issues that affect you day to day. Speaking of which, this morning we focus on black tax, or popularly known as family responsibility. Though it is encouraged to be our brothers or our sisters' keepers, especially in the family unit, family responsibility has been said to give life to toxicity. So how do you handle family responsibility? How do you ensure you create healthy boundaries to weed off needy family members from those that are entitled? We answer these and other questions in a moment. My name is Gladys Gashanja, and this is Your World.
The whole village is depending on you.
As I mentioned, we discuss about black tax, also known as family responsibility. Where and how do you draw boundaries? Elsewhere, Democratic Republic of Congo officially declares the end of the 12th Ebola outbreak.
We're able to contact more community members.
U.S. authorities target geographically isolated people who find it hard to reach vaccine sites.
We were here exactly 415 days ago.
Fans wearing Mickey Mouse ears line up as Disneyland in California finally reopens. It is the 4th day of February. Thank you for making time on your world. And as I mentioned today, we're looking at black tax, also known as family responsibility, and would like to hear from you. And that's why our question of the day to you is, have you ever felt pressured to provide for family members beyond your limits? Have you ever felt pressured to provide for family members beyond your limits? Talk to us. That hashtag is a new normal. And as always, would like to hear from you too as you call us on those numbers at the bottom of your screen. But before we get to that conversation, let's take a look at the impact of COVID-19. The numbers this morning stand at 153,497,250 confirmed cases globally. Out of that number, 131,000, or rather 1,509,526 have recovered, and unfortunately 3,216,367 have succumbed to COVID-19. In Kenya, those numbers are at 160,559 confirmed cases. Out of that, 109,077 have recovered, and unfortunately, we have lost 2,708.
family member is about this person being specific about what they can meet and what they cannot, and also what they are choosing or what they are able to. But the boundaries have to come from the person that is giving away the money, because they are the ones who know how much they can go or willing to go, and also if the need is necessary or not. Because there are all diverse kinds of needs. Once you start working, you're perceived to be able to provide all sorts of needs, inclusive of those that are completely unnecessary. So you are the one that has to determine whether what you're providing for is necessary or not, and also to decide if you're going to do this for life or empower people. So that is the kind of boundaries we are talking about. They create health. Psychological health, spiritual health, even financial health, because you will not run on debts or find yourself not having something for yourself while you provide for others. It reduces the, mental health, issues and torture that you have to go through every night thinking, where do I get extras to send? So when you create boundaries, you save yourself and you maintain your health holistically, whether it's physical, whether it's financial, whether it's psychological, or is even physical, because this stress translates eventually into the physical illnesses.
All right, and we delve into that much further even as we understand this better. And let me hear from George Kilibwa. You have an experience with black tax and you actually blogged about it last year. Tell us more.
Basically, my experience and a lot of experiences that I've seen from the many people I've talked to, it's more to do with different classes. I'd say that there are three types of people. Category one would be the people who actually were beneficiaries of this black tax. So, for example, you are educated with from people who are giving money to your parents or something like that. And then there are those people who are giving the black tax. So your parents or whoever are expecting you to give something small or whatever. And then there are people who know nothing about the black tax. So it doesn't affect them. But then the thing is that it's more to do with the different classes. So you'll find that if you're born in the lower or higher class, or in the lower or middle class, you'll probably fit in group 1 or group 2. But if you're in the upper class, you'll probably never know about it.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. And you said people are expected to give, which means there are various aspects of that expectation. What are some from your experience that inform this expectation?
First of all is how we were raised, because we saw our parents taking care of literally everyone. And so when we grow up, we are expected, because that is what we have been taught. So you cannot deviate from what you have been taught. So this is one of the expectations, that even when it is unwritten, we know that once we get jobs, we are expected to do certain things that we saw our parents do. So that forms part of the expectation. The second part is also how we present ourselves when we start earning or when we leave home, because sometimes it's not even in the earning really, is when we leave that setup and we go to another, then we are imagined to be able to run through because we are doing well. If we were not doing well, we will be back to that space. So sometimes it's perceived. But also how we carry ourselves. You've seen people, especially in the village setups, when they are going to the village, they dress up, they even hire cars, you know, and they present themselves in such a way. They carry shopping for the whole village. So you're already presenting that. You're doing very well. And by extension, the expectation is going to be even higher. Because if you're doing this well, then you need to get us to that particular space as well. We need to live well. So expectation is also based on our own presentation. And the third one also is because some parents think that children are their retirement plan. So once you're off work, or once you get to that space when you want to retire, even if you were really never in any formal employment, then we expect, some parents expect that children need to come through. And therefore, that forms also part of the expectation that because I am no longer earning and I spent all my money on you, then you need to give back. Or is it payback? It can be different from one family setup to another.
Yes. So is it giving back or is it payback? That is a good question. Let me hear from Edith Orego. What is your experience with black tax?
At different points, I believe all of us have experienced black tax. My experience is the same as everybody else, where once you begin to work, all eyes are on you. Some expectations are unspoken and some are spoken. So I've had experiences where when something happens, for example, in the family, and people look at you and they expect you to, for example, give a certain amount of money. And I remember a time where we were going through loss, and I didn't have a job at the time. And I remember having contributed a certain amount of money, and one of my relatives came to the side and they were like, is that all you could give? Like, we were expecting better from you, you know? And one thing that I came to learn through that was to just not over-explain yourself, because you don't know what people are thinking in their heads. People believe that you're doing okay because of how you look, because of how you dress, and they will just be like, no, you've gone to school, you finished school, you are supposed to be able to do this much. So that I've experienced that, and sometimes it can be quite frustrating because you are not where people think you are, and you can't keep explaining to people, because sometimes when you keep explaining yourself to people, then they use that against you in other areas as well. So yeah, it's quite a murky area.
All right. And speaking about murkiness, Joanna has mentioned that some of these expectations, we're the ones who set them up, in as far as what we provide or what they ask and we provide for, to a point where when you can't provide the same, they question why. Did you already have certain expectations as such before this time you didn't have a job?
Yes. And it's also because when you have, then you really extend yourself. You really extend yourself. You're like, okay, I can do this, let me do it. So people get used to you doing certain things. People get used to you doing things at a certain level. So when you're not able to do that, they're like, why? What happened? And when you try to explain yourself, they feel like you're depriving them of what you had gotten them used to. And it's quite interesting. So you learn in the process. You learn that, oh, okay, I didn't know that it was a right for you to have that. I was just giving it out of my own free will, of my ability. But yeah, sometimes people actually take it as they are right. Because you've been doing it. Yes.
Entitlement. Okay, let's hear from Chris Sakwa. What's your experience?
Thank you very much, Gladys. So let me start with a bit of a disclaimer. And probably just cite or quote Chinua Achebe when writing in Things Fall Apart. He says that when a man calls his kinsmen for a feast, he's not doing that to save them from starving. Not that they do not have food in their homes. We're not sitting under the moonlight because of the moon. But it's good when kinsmen come together. From my experience, I think black tax is our norm. It's rather the norm rather than the exception, especially in our context in Africa, because we are really a social society. We are more communist, if you ask me, than capitalistic. Like John has said, we have grown up seeing our parents do this. And it then behooves us to shape up or to be like them, because that's the norm, that's the expectation. Mm-hmm. And so if, and coming from a family, whichever size of family you come from, I come from a sizable family. I'm the firstborn in a family of 12. You, as a firstborn, have this push or the expectation to model behavior, to be the best version of the family. And so it is expected that you would take up responsibility as and when that falls due. And how does that happen? You know, when you have conversations like with your siblings, for example, you're the firstborn, and they call you dad. They say, you know, you're the next dad. If Mzee falls dead today, you are our father. Of course, you know what that means. It means you literally have to take responsibility and full responsibility as such. And the good thing, the interesting thing in our context is, it's not just the immediate family that then becomes your responsibility. It is the extended family. Mm-hmm. So if there's this auntie or there's this uncle who falls ill and they have been referred to Kenyatta National Hospital, woe unto you if you live in Nairobi, because you are going to be the one who is going to take responsibility. They will send this person over to you. They have no idea where you live. They haven't visited, but they know you're in Nairobi. Mm. And so all this responsibility really falls smack in your space. And so I like what Joanne is saying, that there needs to be healthy boundaries. Sometimes it's almost impossible for you to define these boundaries, because if you attempt to, at the next sitting, and these sittings where I come from would ordinarily be during a funeral, when you're having this conversation about burial for someone, we put you on the spot. As boss, you are in Nairobi, we sent this uncle, you didn't do A, B, C, D. You're trying to, what exactly are you communicating? I mean, you have achieved it, you have it, and now you are demeaning the rest of us? So you literally are put on the spot, you're fired. No one cares for what your plans are, for what you're trying to put together in forms of generational wealth or building your own capacity, whatever it is you're doing. No one cares about that, because it is expected that you will help everyone. You are in a position of responsibility, you can help. And this doesn't go only for those that are probably firstborns like me. As long as you're the one who seems, like Edith has said, who seems to have some little money, you take up the position even of the person who has the say. Mm-hmm. And the firstborn may even be quiet in these instances. So it's, like I said, really the norm rather than the exception. And for me, I think it's a good thing, because I am also of, because of my religious leaning and persuasion, I'm of the opinion that which we have, we ought to share. But like Joanne says, boundaries. I may not be the one to set those boundaries, but it's a conversation that we definitely need to have.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Gladys.
That is actually a very good perception of what the African setup is like. And we go back to that question you asked earlier. Is it payback or is it giving? So how do you draw that line?
Giving is where you are the one determining how much you are able to and willing. Mm-hmm. It's not just a matter of you're able to. You may be able to, but the needs you're giving into may not be important to you in any way. So you determine how much you're able to, how much you're willing to, when, because not every other time. When and why and to who. This is now willing. This is what giving is.
Yes.
But there's also where the other people feel entitled. Because you are our firstborn, then you need to take care of us. For sure, you don't need to. You need to empower the rest to take care of themselves. So a sense of entitlement where your parents feel you need to do certain things for them. I have had parents who ask their children to build for them or buy them cars when the person that is supposed to do that doesn't have. So this comes off as payback because it's stipulated. And when you send less than that, even when there's no car or no house to build, there's also a setups where people have a stipulated amount that every end month you're to send us this amount of time and this amount of money. Then that comes off as mandatory. You don't have a choice. And that would seem like it's payback because you're ending up having to borrow and sometimes also having to work extra, not for yourself. At the end of the day, when you're doing payback, you forget yourself. You totally forget your family and you concentrate on the others. Now that is not right by our standards, not religiously and not even culturally. Yes.
Okay, now Chris has said he is not even sure if it's possible to actually stop this vicious cycle. So are there parameters that you can actually say no and still survive in this setup, family setup?
Yes. Yes, I believe, because the number one thing is if you want to set these proper boundaries is where you communicate to loved ones, whether it's family or whoever, and say, every month this is the amount I am able to send to you. And this amount will only come around this time of the month, end month, especially when you get your salary. And now the only other bills you can put are the emergencies that are happening. Not someone says, I need money for the cow, I need money for shamba, I need money for rent, all those. Once you let them know this is the only time I'm able to send you and this amount of money, because this is what I can afford. You don't necessarily need to say no, because the African culture, we are not allowed to say no, especially to our parents. But you can say no in very many other ways, and that is one of them, where you say, I'm only able to send you 10,000 every end month. In the middle of the month, I do not earn. So I am budgeting, and this is the much I can be able to give to you. The rest of the money is put to use to pay bills and all. Now, if a parent asks you in the middle money for cigarette or for some random thing, then you stick to, I communicated and I said, I am only able to give you this amount. At this time, you manage that as I manage what is left with me. So I am actually not able to pay. Now, the issue is not even doing that. It's the guilt that comes with it, or being guilt-tripped.
Yes.
You're becoming irresponsible. We give birth to you. If you do not give us money, you will not be blessed, or you'll be cursed, or whatever any other thing is. I would want people to know that this is a form of manipulation, because you have already given what you feel you are able to give. Apart from now, when an emergency comes up, like illness, you know, those unexpected things to all of us. Now that you can be able to go. But also I know loved ones and family members who use sickness as a strategy to get extra. So also understanding your family dynamics, so that if you know they will use any method, then stick to what you know and what you said you will give. But if you establish that the need they're asking for is an emergency and is legit, then you can also go out of your way. By this, you're teaching them something that all of us need to have structure in as far as finances are concerned. I budget for what I have, and you budget for what you have. If they ask for money any day of the month, and I have had people borrowing and you know, having sleepless nights thinking where they're going to get money to send their loved ones, then you're also teaching them that you are all able. Any day, anytime, they can get money from you. And Gladys, you and I know, if you were told rest and be earning millions, we will rest. So for sure, if you teach them to depend on you, they will surely depend on you. But if you set proper boundaries, give, yes, but also give within your means, so that you have something left for yourself and for your family.
All right. So clearly, if you do not draw the boundaries, it can lead to toxicity. So before we get to how that looks like for different people, remember our question of the day to you is, have you ever felt pressured to provide for family members beyond your limits? That hashtag is a new normal. And we have Detective Ray who says, yes, I have felt pressured to provide for family members beyond my limits, but I had to explain to them my stance. Thank you for sharing. Kitanui Edwin says, that is my normal life. Woy, Edwin, pole sana, but thank you for sharing. Plossi Gay says, with taxation from Uhuru's government, I think we will have to do it. What do you mean exactly? Well, Eugene Victor says, that feeling is really heavy. Eugene, we hear you. And that points to the toxicity we're talking about. Edungazi says, yes, I have. Please give us more examples of what it is you've had to deal with. Charles says, that's the everyday predicament of millions of Kenyans. Another here from Joseph who says, for the firstborns, this is our daily chore. There is a time a guy asked me why I don't like my colleagues and yet we have the same salaries. I looked at him and told myself he will never understand. So this is the case where everyone else seems to have some extra money to spend, but you just don't get to that. Livingstone says the pressure is sometimes too great to an extent of being depressed. The habit is always to walk out, going nowhere, just to pass time because maybe no job and the family keeps putting you into pressure. Livingstone, we hear you. Snoreen Soita says, yeah, that's where the principle of saving can't work because the money is not enough. Soita, thank you for sharing. And Kyoko Kelvin says the pressure is high, but we just have to adapt to it. But the problem is that the younger siblings don't understand. Okay, we hear you. Remember that hashtag is new normal, even as you share with us your experiences with black tax or family responsibility. And speaking about toxicity, the youth that have made it in various industries have also had encounters with black tax. Some cases are so severe the parents run their own children broke. Actor and comedian Victor Nyata tells his story to Cyprian Osoro and Brian Moshiri.
I'm Victor Nyata. I'm an artist and also an entrepreneur. I run a company called Mkisi Mkisi, so basically all about art.
The conversation this morning really is on black tax. Have you experienced instances of this black tax?
Oh, of course, very many times. You know, in the African setup, you wanaamini tu ukiingia tu pahali hivi, whatever job it is, sasa wewe, you're going to take care of everything. So the black tax applies much better in the African, setup, especially now sisi kama wakisi, unapata there are very many ways people get into these professions. Unakuwa tu askari hivi, the whole village is depending on you. Umechukuliwa jeshi, you are now going to take care of everybody. I've experienced that very many times, given that I'm the firstborn, ndio kwanza uko juu, unaambiwa sasa wewe usipotusaidia nani atatusaidia.
You brought in the firstborn aspect.
Yeah.
Ni ukweli firstborn akikuja already kuna responsibilities laid out for you.
Si ni wewe. After mama yako na baba yako ni wewe. You have other siblings wenye wanakufuata. So it means they're looking up to you. So the parents will call you wakitaka do kutumia your siblings kama bait. Sasa hata kijana unajua sasa alichukuliwa high school, sasa textbook ndio hana na unajua vile tuko. I mean, what are you going to do? You have to take care of that. My family has to depend on me because we're actually two of us. So being two of us, wazee wangu already ni wazee washa retire, they don't have a stable income. Definitely they depend on me. My brother will depend on me. Anafungiwa nyumba, the first thing ni a phone call. Niaje, nimefungiwa Kenya sasa. I'd rather come niishi na wewe ama unilipie. So what do you do? Unaangalia unasema I wouldn't want another burden. So unasema wacha jikakamwe umlipie. And then the parents also, and again at their age ni watu wa tugonjwa tudogo. Nimedungwa na kamuiba hapa, wananitisha 2,000. You have to send. Unaget, manze heri ukope. Heri ukope. And that's what happens mostly because wanaweza kupata una do. What do you do? They're your parents. Hutaki kusikia God forbid kitu imewafanyikia. So heri ukope so that when you get your next pay or whatever, at least now you can lipa. And you end up with nothing. So tagundua, there's no financial growth. You get no financial stability.
How have you been able to stay afloat? I mean, as a firstborn, what is the differentiating factor between now I'm doing this too much?
Yeah.
Alafu sasa ni kama ninasaidia and I'm not saidia too much. What is the difference?
Actually, me I have a slogan which says if it's urgent, it has to wait. If it's very urgent, it must wait. Again, kama si ugonjwa, njaa, hizo nini, and I don't have money, tupambane. Hali ni ile. It's not a matter of life and death. Yeah, they have also to understand. The good thing, especially for my case, my mother is pretty much understanding. She knows when I will definitely chip in. And if I have, then, you know.
Well, just an example of what people have to face on a daily, especially when they're dealing with black tax or family responsibility. Victor puts a lot to perspective, and clearly there are other factors to consider even as we talk about black tax. And George, as you were putting together your blog about this, did any of what Victor say resonate with you?
Yes, they did. There was a particular interesting story where there's a lady who was a recipient of black tax. So she was educated by the uncles and the aunts, and then she got a job in Nairobi. So when she came to Nairobi, the first thing that happened is that the uncles and the aunts decided, your younger brother who we were taking care of, now it's your turn because, well, you now have a job in Nairobi. So the fee for the younger brother was about 70,000 shillings, and she was earning 20,000 shillings a month. So a quick arithmetic means that around 6,000 shillings goes to paying fees every month. 70 divided by 12, it's about 6,000 shillings. Now what that does is that you're taking a third of your salary to go and pay fees for your younger brother, which is fine, but then, you know, a third is actually a lot of money, especially if you're earning just 20,000. And to put it into perspective, if, for example, these 6,000 shillings is put into savings, for example, in about 25 years, where maybe someone has worked for 25 years, that would be what, 1.8 million? If that money is put into money market that earns 9%, that is about 6.3 million shillings. But this 6,000 is going to pay your brother's fees. So yes, there are very many instances whereby someone's finances are, let me say, messed because of black tax.
And Edith, just listening to what Victor said in that clip, is that some communities, they see this more than others because it is an expectation that you, when you flourish, you take care of everyone. What's your experience?
Because I've seen friends from other communities, and they would be wondering why is it expected of you to do this, and you're like, oh, but it is expected. I thought it is you think that it is a general thing that happens everywhere, but in some communities it doesn't. I have a friend who normally tells me in their family they are capitalists. So I was like, what does that mean? And she told me even when they travel outside of the country, like the rule is not to expect that because someone has traveled out of the country that it is your right for them to bring you something. So if you want anything, like you want shoes, you want a phone, whatever it is you want, you've got to pay for it. So give them money, then they will bring it to you. And unless they want to bring you a gift as your sister, as your brother, as your mom, your dad, like it runs all the way from the top. Like their parents have instilled in them that culture that you should not be entitled to anybody's money. So even when they travel, when their parents travel, and they're quite well off, they do not expect that somebody is going to bring them something unless that person just wants to bring them something. So if you are specific and you have your own demands, I want this, I want this, I want that, please pay for it, because nobody is carrying that in their bag for you. Nobody is going to spend money for you. So she was telling me they've learned that, they've grown up like that. And I was like, that's actually really, it's really good, where you give someone the opportunity to do what they can. And if they cannot, it's also very understandable, and it shows you that even you need to put in a bit more effort so that whatever is brought, you don't take it for granted.
And I'm wondering, Chris, when somebody, I'm sure somebody is listening to this and thinking, oh my God, that is so selfish of them. How can you not, you know, cater for your family members without even being asked? What do you think?
Thought is this, I think like John had said earlier, when you clearly set some of these boundaries early, I think it sets a precedence. You probably would even be considered the black sheep of the family for having taken such a stance. But if you do not do that, which is really what is widespread, and I like how Edith is sharing stories of her friends. I mean, I have so many people around me who are having to go through this all the while, and it's really the norm. You cannot run away from it. I like the clip that we just watched, the young man saying, you know, unless if it's life and death or someone is hungry, is ingine tujipange. Be that as it may, you most often than not find yourself having to go that extra mile for the sake of those around you. And it's not that you do not want to. Sometimes you probably cannot afford to, but it can really become difficult for you, especially if you are a beneficiary of black tax. You can't run away from this. I mean, we have brought you up. Young man, send me money. What would you do? Literally, you'd have to toe the line and get to pay back, like we all said earlier. So it's to some an evil, a bad thing, but to others, it's our way of life. I mean, how would we have succeeded in Africa or where we come from if it were not for black tax? If someone didn't probably step up to help, how would it have turned out? How would it have been if that niece had finished school and they needed an attachment and they have got one in Nairobi, and you stay in Nairobi and you just can't step up and host them for the while that they need to be here? And they literally, like we are saying, feel entitled. It's their right, really. You're their uncle. So, I mean, you're supposed to do this. So that entitlement sometimes, yes, could rub us the wrong way, could make us feel bad, could leave a bitter taste in our mouth. But guess what? We just need to make adjustments. Live with it. This is Africa. Hello.
We hear you, Chris. But then again, let me take that example you just gave us. The niece who got attachment in Nairobi, you live in Nairobi, so you give her, or you're expected to host her, Joan. At that point, what are the boundaries that you can establish? She's with me, but how does it move from there so that it does not become a lifelong commitment?
I believe setting a boundary at that point is very useful, and that is where most people fail because they do not, or they go wrong. So when this niece comes, we need to have a conversation for me to help this niece understand that even if from the community it is expected 1, 2, 3, it is no longer working this way. So as I host you, I am looking out for you to do attachment, and from there put effort, because I'm only able to host you for this particular time. Now at this point, I have to be ready to face community and its accusations. But you see also, I am helping this niece to begin to prepare their mind to know that it is not your right. Right? And I am also not in that particular space to care for you all your life. So as you have these 3 months, I will give you food. I will host you. Because as you see and as you live here in Nairobi, for example, you will understand that it is not as easy as those who are out there think it is. So I'm only able to host you for this particular point in time. After this, you can make efforts. And Gladys, you and I know that people don't always have to wait for jobs for them to begin to earn an income. So you're also getting them to a space to think outside of the box. Now, if you can present opportunities that are available for them to begin to learn how to make an income, whether they have a job or they do not, is part of boundary making, so that at the end of the day, when time elapses, the one you had set to care for them, then you release them. Now, how are you going to be perceived by the community? You know, if you live for the community all your life, for sure, it will be very burdening. You will be able to appreciate the fact that you have hosted them when they needed to be hosted. And you will let them go, not because it will make anyone happy, but because this is what you need to do even for your own wellness. Otherwise, you will end up hosting 10 cousins, 5 nieces, 20 nephews, and who can do that anyway in this economy?
And before we take a short break, clearly something has come out of this conversation. Whether it's culture or religion, they play a part in informing how black tax looks in certain families. Explain.
Religion, because this is what we have assimilated. But in this particular case, I would want to say people pick out particular parts of their religion that would be able to meet certain needs. So I hear a lot of time people being told to honor parents, which is okay. I am a Christian, I believe in that as well. But I also would want to ask, because in most cases when people are told, for example, honor your parents, it only translates to the monetary. I would ask, is honor equals only to monetary? So long as you can be able to do what is within your means to be able to help your parents, then that for me equals to honor. And all the other aspects of, meeting them, caring for their emotional needs, all those would equals to honor. But then again, when we translate it only to the financial part, and this financial part, for example, I have had very many cases where people struggle with guilt and feeling like they are less of this religious setup because they are not able to meet this particular expectation, right? So being able to do your part and being answerable to you as a person and asking, have I given my best in my own understanding and capacity? If it's a yes, then that's a sealed deal. Then also culture, because most of the Africans, and some communities are more than the others, grow up seeing your parents taking care of their siblings, the children of their siblings, and therefore, even when you are growing up, you were hosted like 20 of you. So for you, what you learned, and I like what Edith said in that context, because you learned this is the norm. You don't know any other norm. So once you get your money, you're supposed to continue that culture because that's the only one you have. And even when you want to get into a new culture and assimilate it, it becomes difficult because this is already so ingrained in you. So some of the people is not even because they are forced to, but the culture already told you that's the way to go. So you want to continue in that particular way. Observed behavior, you learned it, this is your norm. Now, the second part is also where certain families say certain things about themselves. So that now, when you're like in those, what Chris is talking about, when you're firstborn, you're told you're the parent. What does that parenting entail? For me, if I was a firstborn and I was told you're the parent, I would have to sit with my siblings and define what this parenting is. And also explain what I can be able to do as a firstborn and what I can't. And I always like to look at it this way. Even as much as we are in an African culture, I ask, what if I'm the only one taking care of my family and I died? How would it look like? Will they survive? If they can survive, that means I can be able to empower them to care for themselves without completely depending on me.
Which is now essentially teach them how to fish. Okay. All right. That is a good place to actually put a pause to this conversation. When we come back from the break, there is somebody who says, how do you now define the parameters, especially when you are married and now the family is bigger and there are in-laws to deal with? We'll be right back.
Well done, Soap and Water! You got rid of all the germs on Achilles' hands!
Timeless love.
What kind of illness? Oh, you see, that Roberta was born with a heart problem. We assumed that she inherited from my biological father. I just remember that his name was Roberto.
My daughter, the one who was kidnapped, she also had a heart condition.
Mrs. Renata, oh, I'm glad you're here. Your sister Roberta passed out. She almost can't breathe. I think it's her heart again.
Oh, no. Auntie. Auntie, you okay?
Maybe that's her. Roberta.
Timeless love.
Each bowl of Nestle Ceregrow contains the goodness of cereals and nutrition your child needs to blossom. That's one less thing to worry about. Nestle Ceregrow. It's all good, Mom.
We digitized more than 30 million single sheets of paper. Nairobi has about 250,000 transactable parcels. Those titles that are both in the Survey of Kenya, in the Cadastre, the Land Administration, Land Registration, and all the other departments of the Ministry.
So yes, the digitization of land registries, how much is it costing the taxpayer?
There are two titles, for example, covering the same parcel of land. The system will not allow you to upload them.
If you read the Public Finance Management Framework, one of the provisions is that counties will mobilize on-source revenue through land rates. And I can tell you county governments are really banking on this digitization.
Try Panadol Advance for relief from headaches, body aches, and fever. With Panadol's Optizorb formula, the tablet gently breaks down in the stomach, quickly absorbs, and starts providing pain relief in 15 minutes. For fast and effective pain relief that you can trust, try Panadol Advance.
Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gashanja. Today the conversation is black tax or family responsibility. We still have Joanne Kirera, who is a family therapist, with us in studio, George Kilibo, who is a blogger, Edith Orego, who is a food products distributor, and Chris Sakwa, who is a HR consultant, even as they give us the experience with the same. Now, before we go back to that conversation, actually to kick us off in this hour, we have a caller from Nakuru. David, what's your question or comment?
Gachanja, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning, Gachanja.
Uh-huh.
A good topic for discussion.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
A good topic for discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to very one parameter that have been put forward by one of the panelists, setting boundaries as a sense of family responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
I think setting boundaries, first of all, inculcates a sense of responsibility, a sense of independence, and a sense of duty. In so many ways, if you find where family responsibilities, while you're taking care of your sibling or any other member of the family, and you set a boundary that this is what you're supposed to do up to here. And then that means you develop a sense of responsibility so that then in the future you don't have somebody who does not take care of himself. Because when you say now I've done enough to assist you, go out there and help yourself.
Uh-huh.
Because I've set the boundaries, then you start even thinking about it even before you are supposed to go out there. But if you don't do that, then this person, that's why you hear many times people who are over 35, they are working. They cannot leave their mother's houses. They cannot leave their parents' housing. Because then they were never told to do this This is not your area. This is my area. Therefore, you want to remain there permanently because you didn't get a sense of responsibility. Then in the process also, you create friction for nothing. It helps us. If you look at so many tribes, we in Kenya, we are diverse tribes. If you find people from Central Province, they set boundaries right from a certain level of your age.
Yes.
But when you go to Luyaland, for instance, people want to stay together to the level that you cannot devolve. But if you are able to be told that this is what you are supposed to do up to this time, please go out there and help yourself. When you're able to help yourself, develop yourself much earlier. That means you develop sense of responsibility, sense of independence. I think that's the area I wanted to just look at as part of your discussion.
Thank you, David
Setting
from
boundaries-
Nakuru.
Setting boundaries is key.
Asante sana. And that is actually one of some, we were talking about toxicity, and this is one of the toxic effects, somebody being over-dependent, never learning responsibility, Joan?
Yes. Yes, because a sense of responsibility, as David says, does not even need to be taught as an adult.
Yes.
It needs to be taught for children, young children. From 3 years, they need to have a sense of responsibility of certain things. So as they begin to assimilate it at that age, that when you use a cup, you can go and put it on the kitchen sink. As you get to 5 or 6 years, you can begin to make your own bed. It's not my responsibility to come and make it for you. By the time you're 10, you need to be able to take care of your room. You know, moving through secondary school, by the time you're this age, you need to be able to go through your learning without supervision. So this is something that they are learning as they go through life. And by the time they are 18, they already are heavily responsible over certain areas of their lives. Now, when they go to the university, they begin to take charge. By the time they are released to the world of work world, then they already can make proper decisions. They can critically think. They both have the hard skills and soft skills. Even the employer will have no problems with them. Now, this one transiting into the adult life will be pretty much easier than this one where you learn to tell what to do. When they are 18, you're still telling them. At university level, you're still telling them. By the time they become adults, they still sit and expect you to tell them or get things done for them. And as they, become adults, they are also expecting their spouses to tell them. So even as we are being expected as a nation to take care of others when we begin to work, do we even have capacity? That's the first question. And now if another person is depending on you when you're already, not skilled enough to be able to take care of your own needs, then that means you definitely go under. You will either become mentally ill or you will have chronic stressors, and those are part of, toxic black tax.
Yes.
Where people end up becoming very resentful, very bitter. You look at your family and you feel all these negative emotions until most people end up cutting themselves out of the family setup. On the other hand, your parents are feeling rejected because they don't understand your resentment. So toxicity is two-way. Both family members become toxic to each other. Now also, it creates chronic stress. You're forever stressed because money is never enough and your own needs are unmet. You have heard very many people say, and these things are all over, even on social media, I was taking care of my mother, that's why I was in arrears. I was taking care of my father's needs. And this time, these are adults who can be able to run their lives to a certain extent. So you give your all, you totally forget yourself. And then you're dealing with heavy stress. Now that is damage to your own self because you haven't been able to set boundaries, and therefore you are suffering this toxicity.
Yeah.
The other one is people go under depression. There's a lot of depression, especially since COVID. And part of it is contributed by these factors where you're expected to carry more burdens than you can. And times are already hard. And because also partly some of the people taught their parents that you can resign or you stop doing the shop business or, you know, selling at the market because I have this good job. And therefore, when you incapacitate your parent, then you become totally responsible for their lives. Times like when COVID happened and people lost jobs, so you still have a responsibility to foot yours and their bills because you taught them to stop depending on themselves so that they can depend on you. So that is a sense of dependency. Again, we have these particular children who are challenged in a family, like they're in drug abuse or simply just don't want to work. And there are others who do very well. So you realize that parents keep asking that you provide for them so that they can provide for themselves as parents and also provide for the children who depend on them. Again, a sense on the part of the parent, where the parent has erred, we also need to have the individuals taking up and asking if the supplier is no longer able to, what happens to me? So, and that is what David was saying, when you get people who are age of living by themselves and depending on themselves, still living with their parents and depending on them because their parents have taught them, you can depend on us. We are well sufficient, which is not true or sustainable.
Okay, over-dependence, over-reliance, another toxic trait of black tax. And actually, there is a tweet here from Alex Mongo who says this is the major reason most firstborns nurse bitterness for years or exhibit the two extremes. Get married and leave home early or never want to get married at all. Interesting perspective before we get to the marriage part. Edith, what are some of this, what are the effects that you have felt straight up as a family member that you can actually associate to the pressure that came with black tax?
Some of the effects would be when you're not able to give or you're not in that place of giving to the level that is expected of you, sometimes you feel inadequate. I'm a firstborn as well, and there are those expectations which sometimes you, even when the other siblings are also working, you still feel the pressure is more on you. It may not be there, but you feel it. So sometimes when you're not able to do what you're supposed to do, or for example, when a parent calls and they're in need and you're not able to provide, or something has happened and you're not able to provide a solution, you actually feel inadequate. You feel like you're less of a person. You feel like you're not able to pull your weight. You're not, you know, what kind of a person or what kind of a child am I if I'm not able to step in for my parents, if I'm not able to provide solutions for them. So there's usually that feeling, and it can make you start being really stressed. It can make you depressed. So, yeah.
Okay, Chris, what's your experience? Do you feel that pressure to live up to the firstborn you are?
Yeah, the pressure is on. And even beyond just my own family. Even in your social circles and people you relate with, there are those expectations. And of course, we get to see this every other day when probably someone is bereaved or we lose someone and you just find yourself in a WhatsApp group. You probably haven't been appointed the treasurer or the chair or whatever. And the expectation is that you are going to contribute to this. And so there's this pressure for you to be able to do this. When you do not and you cannot, you probably are labeled as a perpetual non-contributor. And that then gets to change your image. So as a firstborn, the pressure is always on for you to watch out for your siblings, give direction, give guidance, give support, be able to do that which you can do. And sometimes not because your parents are probably not in a position to do that, but as a firstborn, it's just the expectation, it's not the norm. You cannot run away from it. So that pressure, that responsibility, that focus, that everyone is just looking to you and looking at you, even when there is probably nothing to do with finances. Maybe we're not even talking about financial capital, maybe even just social capital. You're the firstborn. And so it's expected when there is anything, everyone is just turning to you and asking, okay, bro, you know. And so that pressure is real.
Okay, and George, from your research, even putting this blog together, what did you hear in as far as the backlash that comes with not being able to live up to these expectations?
I think and it's a bad thing, it's the guilt trip. Because you'll find that whoever, your aunt, your uncle, your parents, for example, your brother, your sister, they'd be like, you can get curses if you do not help. Or, the Bible says ABCD, or maybe the Quran says ABCD. So I think that was a major thing, that there's a guilt trip that comes to this black tax thing, such that you're expected to give, and if you do not give, you are threatened with generational curses, for example, and so on and so forth. And I think that's probably, we've been mentioning about setting boundaries, and the other thing that we probably need to do is that to get rid of this guilt trip, so that even if you're giving, it shouldn't come with that guilt trip that if I do not give, I will be cursed, for example, because that's what makes people get into debt, because you have to, and in real sense, I do not think you have to.
I hear you. And Joanne, that is a very tricky place to be, because as much as you are not able to, or you want to create the boundaries, but at the end of the day, your conscience just keeps telling you, you've got to do this. If you don't, this will happen to you. So how do we keep ourselves in check?
It's also, first of all, to evaluate the belief that we hold. Like, if I am not able to take care of my parents, I will be cursed. I don't know where people drew some of these things from, because if it's the Bible, for example, then a curse without a cause does not hold. So it is to evaluate. We need to sit and evaluate the beliefs we hold for us and ask, are they true? Or are we stuck at just this belief? Because if I am here beating myself for not being able to, then actually I am doing what I call self-hate. Because how do I take myself to levels where I cannot be able to do, unless I really disregard myself this much? So some of these beliefs need to be evaluated, and so that we make peace with where we are at in specific times. There are seasons that you will not be able to give the much you would want to give, and that is okay. There are stages and processes of human life, and there are seasons you'll be able to give more, and that is okay. So the determinant is not what they feel because of how much I am able to give, but the genuineness of how much I am able to give, and the fact that this is what I can afford at this point in time. So more like people not attaching their value to what they do.
Identity.
Yes. But being able to see yourself as a holistic person, worthy, whether you're giving this much or whether you're giving this little. Again, we need to evaluate the things that we were told growing up. Because we also have grown in some families. Some people have grown in families where the person who would give much is more preferred than the one who gives less. And so you're buying acceptance as well by giving as much as you can. Some of these beliefs need to be evaluated and asked, what is this we believe at our core, even with our giving? And this again takes us to the point of saying, if you're giving and expecting nothing, no love, sometimes no thank you even, nothing in return by those siblings that you're providing for, that you don't expect them to give you back, that even for parents, you don't expect love or any other thing. You just give because you feel that is your obligation. That is the perspective, the basis, and the kind of healthy giving that we are talking about here. If for sure you can say, I expect nothing in return, then at that point, you are okay to give.
All right, that is well explained. We have James from Kiserian on the line. James, what's your question or comment?
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to have to talk about my picture, and then I get to my question. I think my key question is how far in terms of boundaries, without thinking, looking at our society, we are an African society, we are social in nature. That's how we are. So how far is too far without appearing stingy in terms of the boundaries. Then number two, I'd like the panelists also address the issue of how do we deal with what the black tax causes. It causes dependency, it causes entitlement. And we see that even at the workplaces, in families, in relationships. People feel entitled, and sometimes it causes relationship issues. So it's not just about the aspect of giving money, giving back to the family, but there's the issue of people becoming, it causes you to become now entitled, and you expect the world to be good to you, you expect the world to give back to you because you gave back to your family. So it moves away from the family circle. It now determines how you relate with the people around you in your social setup. Thank you.
Thank you, James from Kiserian. And I think the questions he's put across, we've been able to touch on, especially what you just talked about in as far as defining what giving means to you and how you perceive those you are giving and those who give to you in the future. And at this point, let's also look at it from a marriage point of view. And I'd like to hear from Chris. You are married, have a family of your own. How do you handle this now that the family is multiplied?
Thank you for that. So yes, the responsibilities or the focus now widens. You almost are now zooming out to cover a little more. And it definitely is expected of you as a son-in-law, for example, to take part in what it is that you must. And so it definitely becomes important or imperative for you then to strike that balance, because in marriage you easily would be deemed to be favoring your side and not your in-laws if you do not do things right. So there definitely has to be a point of agreement. So like in my situation, for example, my wife and I had to agree well in advance when we started out, which Joanne is alluding to as setting boundaries, that if it's supporting our families, we are going to do that in equal measure. So if we're going to be setting aside something, how much is it? And if there is a need this side, you try and also do a similar thing to the other side. So trying to strike a balance while at it, because those needs will always be there. There will always be that relative who, an uncle in-law who passed on, and we definitely need to chip in. We have to do that. So if you do not have a kitty that would probably help address such, then you can run into problems. If you are not managing finances together as a couple, then again, that's a real deal. Because you probably would be doing things by yourself, helping your people, your family, neglecting the other, or depending on the kind of marital relationship you have, you are pushed or, quote unquote, as we say, sat upon by your spouse to take care of his or her family at the expense of yours. And so that balance can really be a tricky thing if you have not established those boundaries and they're not very clear.
Okay, thank you for that perspective, Joanne. I mean, this can be a make or break for marriages. So he talks about taking care of the family members in equal measure, having a kitty. What else?
That is one. And also there's the possibility of two people evaluating which side is more needy than the other. Because in some setups, some families have more needs, or they are well able and the other one is, struggling more. So also dialoguing around those so that they agree that because these ones need more, then we can help them until this time, or we can empower them. But yes, totally agree with the fact that there needs to be a conversation and some form of setup that they work with. Also, in some setups, especially with the lady's family, there's an expectation, not all, some, where now the parents expect double. If our daughter was giving us 30,000 per month, now that you're married, it needs to be 60,000. And therefore, now also it is up to these two to bring this conversation up and each person to address their particular families to let them know we are only able to come in through at this point, right? And I know this one can be very tricky, but then again, you're setting yourself up. If you continue with their expectations, you're setting yourself up for a lot of stress because you're going to have your own family. and they're going to have needs, and needs are going to be magnified. So how is that going to look like? Also teaching them that if you do not, unless I take care of me first, then I am going to get stuck at some point in life and continue to expect other people to take care of me. So as a couple is to sit, agree, but also realize that your setup, your immediate family needs come first. You can't love people the way you don't love yourself, even as a couple. So whether it's either families, then they need to be able to talk about it first before they can begin to give out. And I have seen setups where people give to their particular family secretly.
Yes.
Now, that is a marriage sabotage because this family begins to learn that the problem is your spouse. Even if ideally, that may be completely untrue. So building a trustworthy and a honest, transparent conversation in as far as finances are concerned helps you to get rid of so many other problems that may come by. Now, if this wife loses a job who was giving secretly, or this husband, then where does that leave the marriage? See? And this is also where families, extended families, keep on saying, the problem is the wife they married or the husband that he married, because now they do not allow them to help us.
Yes.
So you also create some marriage issues within the family, the marriage setup, or the extended setup in the way they view you. So dialogue is the most important, and people agree honestly how much they can do and communicate the same to their own families.
George, did you come across any married couples that spoke to you as you were putting together your article about how they handle black tax?
Yes, and I think the most important thing is what Joanne and Chris have talked about, which is just having a conversation. We should remember that when one is single, the amount of money that they can help out is much more than when they are now married, because now there are more expenses in the house. For example, you need to take care, you need to think about your children and so on and so forth. So there has to be a conversation whereby either party, so for example, the man will probably have to talk to the parents and or his family and let them know that from now on, I can only afford this much because I used to give maybe 10,000, but now I can only afford 5,000 because now I have a family. Because there was an interesting story that someone got a baby and an aunt or a grandmother called, and they were like, you know, when I heard you got a baby, I was very happy. So I celebrated very much until I lost my voice. Now, can you send me 1,000 shillings so I can get my voice back? So I think these are conversations that need to be had, that now that there's a family on board, the amount of money that I can spare is limited.
Very well said. Let me hear from Edith. You said you're a firstborn, have experienced black tax one way or another in your life, but you also mentioned that you found ways to put boundaries. Which are these?
First of all, it's just communication. You communicate that at this particular moment, I'm not able to do this. Just like the others have mentioned, that at different stages of your life, you will be able to do certain things or you won't be able to do certain things. Like, for example, when you have a job and you're living at home with your parents, I believe you can be able to pull your weight more because you're living in your parents' home and you're earning an income and you don't have to pay bills, you don't have to, you know, buy certain things, you don't have to take on certain responsibilities personally. So you're able to pull a bit more weight in the house because you're living with your parents. But when you move out and you go to live by yourself, now you have your own bills, you have your own things to do, you have your own things to take care of. Add on to that now your own family. So you see different processes, I mean different levels of your life, things are going to start changing because now your priorities start to shift. So there has to be that communication. Obviously, sometimes there might be misunderstanding, but when you establish that from the beginning, then it is settled. So, and then also just learning not to feel guilty, understanding yourself where you are, and it's not that I do not want to give, but I actually don't have. So when you learn to forgive yourself, when you learn that this is just a season, I believe that it helps you to also cushion yourself from the arrows that are going to come from outside. So, but if you also constantly beat yourself, then when people from outside also beat you up, then it really, really affects you. So learn where you are as an individual, and then put, it's more like putting a wall around yourself to also protect yourself from the outside. Then when you're okay within yourself, it is easy for you to deal with what comes from outside.
Now, Edith, let's be honest here. Have you had to deal with a certain situation that made you literally block off somebody from your life because they just won't get the boundaries?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Tell us more.
Yeah. Yes, I have. You just block them out. It's as simple as that. You block them out and you live your life. Because, as I said, you can also keep, when you keep having to explain yourself over and over and over again, people might use that against you in other areas. So I remember a certain instance when I used to over-explain. I'll be like, oh, sorry, guys, I don't have the money this time, and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I remember my siblings having to tell me, you don't have to do that. Just keep quiet. Because sometimes when you also keep explaining yourself, people get ammunition to use against you. You don't know, people might go sit back and be like, why doesn't this one, why are they the only ones who always don't have? All the time, same story. They always don't have. They always don't have. Or they can't do much. So for me, it is to learn to protect yourself first, and then you'll be able to deal with other people from outside.
Chris, have you had to nip it at the bud without having to explain and just walk away because something is not working anymore?
Honestly, Gladys, as you asked Edith that question, I was trying to recollect instances where I have had to do that. I don't know if it is that I cannot recall, but no. Interestingly, I haven't really gotten there. And I would be lying if I said I did.
Okay.
I don't recall that.
All right. That's a good place to be, because at least people have understood your parameters and are working with what you've laid out. Now, we're about to take another short break on Your World, but remember, our question of the day to you is to let us know if you've ever felt pressured to actually provide for your family members beyond your limits, and that hashtag is a new normal. If you can have that up. Charles says that's the everyday predicament for millions of Kenyans. I think we've had this before, and a lot of people coming out to say this is their reality. Joseph also said about firstborns and why he thinks he's living a different life from other firstborns. This is also from Joseph. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, more of your feedback as we also answer this question that's being posed. Is it okay to withhold how much you earn from family members to avoid toxic scenarios? We'll be right back.
I'm not your maid. Kama unataka kahawa, fix it yourself.
You're acting crazy.
Unajua ni wanaume wangapi huko nje, they died to have 1 second with me. Yet you're here cheating on me.
Perhaps we need a break.
Ati? Ujue hiyo mdomo yako ninaweza ingoa. YouTube uko itekiriwe na dogi.
Kuna mse fulani amededi pale juu, landlord amepatikana.
Holm inaenda jela sasa.
Hakuna kitu watajua unless ujipeleke.
Mimi ndo nilimuua.
Wow, thank you for your time. How juicy.
Juicy.
It is the largest women-owned dairy cooperative society in Kenya.
Tulianzisha Masai Women Dairy Cooperative 2011.
Na tuko na real members 3,400.
We are collecting almost 45,000 liters per day.
Cooperative Bank has partnered with Masai Kajiado Women Cooperative Society to give them a line of credit of 44 million to be able to pay their members on time.
Wamama mmesomesha watoto, mmejenga manyumba.
Masai Kajiado Women Cooperative Society this Tuesday at 6:45 p.m. on NTV.
Try Panadol Advance for relief from headaches, body aches, and fever. With Panadol's Optizorb formula, the tablet gently breaks down in the stomach, quickly absorbs, and starts providing pain relief in 15 minutes. For fast and effective pain relief that you can trust, try Panadol Advance.
Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gashanja. The conversation this morning is black tax, even as we stay on with our panelists this morning. But before we get to it, there is a developing story, and that is that expected visit from Tanzanian president to the country. That is Samia Suluhu Hassan, who is expected to arrive in the country anytime now, and she will be received by President Uhuru Kenyatta at State House. We have Leila Mohammed, who is following up on the story, joining us in studio. Leila, what are the plans ahead of us this day, even as we host the president of Tanzania?
Well, Gladys, the next 48 hours will be important and key for the relationship between Kenya and Tanzania. Remember, for the last 6 years, we've been having a roller coaster of emotions in terms of engagements with our southern neighbor. This is a great opportunity for Kenya to reach out to Tanzania in a different light, to foster bilateral ties, to engage at a deeper level in terms of business prospects for this country. So for President Suluhu to choose Kenya as her second spot in her East African visit across the region is an amazing thing for Kenya. Remember, just as she took office in March 2021, President Uhuru Kenyatta sent an emissary to Dar es Salaam, and that was the Cabinet Secretary for Sports, Amina Mohamed. This was a significant trip, and possibly we can just suppose and say, among other issues, wishing her well in her new role as the head of state of Tanzania, it was reaching reaching out in terms of requesting her to visit Kenya, to come and visit with President Uhuru Kenyatta to have much more deeper conversation in terms of moving the region forward. Remember, Kenya is also playing her role in terms of becoming the biggest economy in the region, and that is the East Africa and the Great Lakes region. So Suluhu is coming not as a guest of Kenya. However, this is a historic trip because she's coming here for the first time being a head of state of Tanzania. This is one of the roles that she will be playing for the next 5 years going forward after having been chosen as the chairperson of CCM, which is a ruling and a very important party within the Tanzania democratic space. So she is a lady of first, one of the few women in Africa to have been given the chance of being head of government in East African region. Burundi and Rwanda had already begun the process of choosing women in terms of heading those republics. But for Samia, she comes in at a time when Kenya and Tanzania have been having, let's say, not so cordial relationships in terms of how they engage. The latest spat was in how Kenya was dealing with the issue of importing maize from Tanzania. Kenya was saying they are not able to trace back those stocks of maize into Tanzania. The farmers are not going directly to the warehouses, and it's not easy to know which maize and where it is from. And in terms of even the acceptability for human consumption, Tanzania on its part is saying that Kenya is putting too many restrictions on them. Remember, during President Magufuli's reign, there were some issues at the border when Tanzania burnt some of our chicken, the chicks that had gone into Tanzania. Tanzania was claiming that the due process had not been followed to the latter, as well as the cattle that had gone to graze on the Tanzanian side of the border. Those are some of the issues that took President Uhuru Kenyatta to Dar es Salaam to discuss at a deeper level. However, many are still saying there needs much more policy to be spoken to in terms of engaging at a deeper level, because Kenya and Tanzania, we are not only joined at the hip, we have our citizens who speak a similar language. Kiswahili is spoken across the border. So many as 60 million Africans speak that language, and it's something that unites these two states. We have a history basing from the era of the Zanzibar Sultanate, which took its reign into the Lamu archipelago, and the whole entire coast of East Africa bases off such historical ties where Tanzania plays a significant role. So as we await her arrival into Kenya, we do know that her itinerary will be a packed one. This morning, she's expected to meet President Uhuru Kenyatta for bilateral talks at the State House, Nairobi, after which she's expected to go to the late Mzee Jomo Kenyatta's mausoleum next to Parliament buildings. Next, we will be expected to be fashioned with further details of where next she will be expected to go. Probably President Uhuru Kenyatta will host a special dinner in her honor later in the evening because of her religious obligations during the day. Tomorrow will be a specifically important day in her visit in this country, because she will be in a position to speak to members of parliament from both houses and have 1 hour with them just to explain her policies, who she is as the leader of Tanzania, what kind of relationships does she expect moving forward. Remember also, she will be speaking to business personalities from Kenya and Tanzania, looking at what are the issues within the greater aspect of business relationships that we will be looking into. Kenya exports a lot of manufactured goods into Tanzania. Tanzania imports into Kenya a lot of agricultural produce. We have many Tanzanian businessmen who are eager to invest in various sectors, whether it is in the manufacturing or the real estate business or even the entertainment, Gladys. So there's much more to this just small 48 hours visit that President Uhuru Kenyatta is expecting to really make much more of in terms of moving the relationship between these two countries forward.
Thank you, Leila Mohammed. Clearly a lot lined up in the next 48 hours, even as Kenya hosts Tanzania President Samia Suluhu Hassan, who is expected to land in the country anytime now. And this visit is expected to cement recent commitments between the two countries. And of course, as Leila Mohammed mentioned, address some sticking issues in their relations. Well, she and a host of other reporters in the newsroom will be following up on this visit and, of course, the ripple effects of the same, and we'll keep you updated in our subsequent bulletins. For now, let's shift gears back to our conversation of the day, and that is black tax, family responsibility. When we went to break, I asked this question that has been posed to me. Is it okay to withhold how much you earn from family members to avoid toxic scenarios? Edith, I'm curious, have you had to do this?
Now, yes.
And was the expectation for you to say how much you earn at some point, even as you move on up?
I don't think there was the expectation of me to say how much I earn, but I would easily offer that information. I would easily offer that information in the process of having to explain, like, oh, I'm not able to help now because you see, this is how much I earn and this is what I did and did and did. So now you see, I'm not able to. So you realize that at some point, it's like people now start calculating in their heads, if this is how much this person earns, then once they've done this and done this and done that, then they're able to do, why are they not able to do this or do this or do that? So I learned not to do that. I had to learn not to do that. Like, don't give out too much information.
Because it's still used as ammunition against you. Chris, how many people know how much you earn?
I think it's only a wise person who will withhold such information from the quote-unquote prying extended family. I have not done that. Fortunately also, none of my extended family members has forthrightly approached me and asked me how much I take home. And it's only wise that you probably hold that information. If indeed you're going to live your life, take care of your family, build your generational wealth and all that, this information need not be in their domain. I take.
All right, George, we were all young and foolish at some point where we felt even our own parents, now that they took us to school, they need to know how much we take home. Did you ever got entrapped in such?
When I started working, my parents knew how much I earned. Right now, it's just probably my wife alone. I'd say, excuse me, I'd say it's, I was going to use the word foolish, but it's not wise for people to know how much you earn. Because what that does is that they start, as someone has said, they start budgeting in their heads. I have this chama and it's this much, so who exactly can I call? There's that cousin, there's that nephew somewhere. I remember there's a time I got a job, it was a county job, and the salary was well known by everyone. And it's my own mother who told me, you can't take this job, because what will happen is that all your relatives know that you're taking this job and this is how much you're going to earn. So what will happen is that in their heads, they'll be calculating for you. This is the much you should pay in rent, this is what you should give, so and so and so and so. So I am of the view that the fewer people know how much you earn, the better.
And John, I hear from the three, it is wise not to give this information to your family and extended family. But then again, there are those who are very comfortable doing so, but they still keep their boundaries. What's the secret?
I believe when you come of age, you have to determine what is personal and what is for the family. Again, it's a boundary issue. Because if my salary belongs to my extended family, for them to know, then it's also the right to budget with me. So unless I decide this is personal, it doesn't need to go to this particular space. And what is the motivation for letting them know anyway? See, these are the kind of questions I ask. If someone is comfortable telling not a problem, but also be ready for the consequences of it. Number one, that they will budget together with you. And if you think it's important to buy a dress worth 10,000, no, they think it is okay to buy one worth 500. So you will need to also bear with their way of budgeting, even if you're worlds apart. So to prevent some of those things, you might need to determine that this is personal because this is just in my space for me to handle, for me to work for me to budget for. Now, that said, I also would want to say that there are other parents and other siblings and other families that demand to know how much the person earns. Yes. And in that case, that is a form, for me, I look at that as a form of toxicity because then they are not able to tell where they end and where you begin as an individual. And I keep saying, if you cannot be able to put that boundary at that point and say, you know, whatever you want to say, because if you earn enough to take care of you, then that's enough answer. That doesn't need to be explained or by explained. Exactly how much? Surely, that is a level you can decide as an adult, I am not getting to. Because it does not benefit you in any way, anyways. So if you're in that setup where you're forced, you can always decide that is the beginning point of manipulation, and you can decide to say no to it. Again, not no, I'm not telling you because I said Africans are not expected to say no to elders. But you can still withhold the information, and it's still a form of saying no nicely.
Wisdom is called for in this situation. And there's another question here, and somebody has told me, direct this one to Chris. Have you ever felt you need to sort of hide your progression in life? Because in itself, it makes people think if he's moving on up, then we are also moving on up with him.
That's interesting. Thank you for whoever that is for directing the question to me. Yes, there have been instances where you want to withhold some things and keep some things from the public for very obvious reasons. But there are some are like a cough. If you're hiding somewhere and you have a cough, at some point it will just find you out. I mean, it will come out. And so some of them, you definitely would have to let them come to the fore. But even as you do that and you are making some little baby steps, you're progressing, you're putting up something that everyone can see. It's an infrastructural project that you have, and everyone can see it. And something unfortunate happens to you. People already start talking. People are looking at you with a bad eye, you know. That conversation gets read its ugly head. Be that as it may, there are instances where you want to keep some things away from the public knowledge, public here being the extended family. You definitely do not want to air everything out there. And so, yes, those instances have been there where I have had to keep some of my things or my achievements or some of the things I'm working on under wraps until the right time. Then we can have that conversation at that time.
Now, Edith, there is this common meme that makes the rounds where it shows this lady who's dressed to go and do her second-hand shopping. So she literally dresses differently, and so that she doesn't also get to a point where the seller is looking at her as, you can afford much more, so I'm going to overquote, which is the reality. Some people have to leave when they meet their family members so that those family members don't think, alifika, kwa nini anatunyima? Do you ever deal with this?
No, at least I haven't had to deal with that. One thing I know about my family is that they actually encourage you to look good, even when times are tough. I know of moments when probably when I want to travel home to go and see my mom, and you become so conscious. You're like, if I go home with my hair looking a certain way, mom will be like, are things this tough, my daughter? Are things this tough? Like, so I've been brought up, like my parents have brought me up to always, you know, be conscious of how I look, no matter how things are. Like, just take care of yourself. You don't have to show people out there that things are tough. So just look good, even if things are tough. So I haven't had a scenario where I have to dress down or reduce myself so that people don't think a certain way or don't think that I'm looking good or I'm doing good, and yet I'm withholding from them. So, no.
Aha. All right. So, George, putting together this blog that we've been referring to, it actually is on Black Tax, and he was able to interview a lot of people, do a lot of research about this subject matter. What is the one thing that stood out for you, for those that were able to create the boundaries?
I think the first thing that you should expect if you're going to put up boundaries is that people will look at you like you've done a crime, because you know, not helping out even though you can't seems like it's very un-African. And that's probably even the reason why this thing is called black tax, because it's more prevalent in the black community. So you'll find even in African Americans that they also have it. So the first thing that most people encountered was some sort of resistance from their family members. That why are you doing so and why are you doing this and this? Well, you're in Nairobi, so the perception is always that if you're in Nairobi, you're doing okay. It doesn't matter whether you've lost your job because of COVID or whatnot, but you're in Nairobi, you should be able to cater for ABCD. So that was the major thing, that there was some sort of resistance to the whole boundary thing.
But even as they establish boundaries, what works for them?
The thing is, you know, once you have a conversation and you stick to it, at the end of the day, it's your money. You're not obligated to give it out. In as much as the way the black tax is defined is that it's an expectation. So you're expected to give, but you should not be obligated to give it. So basically, once you have a conversation that, you know what, from now on, this is what I can afford, and yes, that's it. Even if there's some resistance, even if people will call you names, just stick to it. Stick to what you have discussed with them. That will help you. Do not go back on your word, because what that does is that it makes your next conversation a bit harder, because when you'll have your next conversation, they will think, okay, it's fine, we had this conversation a while back and you still give us more or something like that. So I think that's the most important thing. Have the conversation and stick to what you have decided.
Definitely writing this blog had a lot of take-homes. Have you applied the same in your life?
Yes, I have. I think the most important thing, and probably this is something I haven't seen us talking about, is to make sure that this thing stops with our generation. Now, I'll give an example. My father, for example, was the firstborn. And him being the firstborn, when he got to a certain level of education and got a job, it was expected of him to take care of his other siblings, which he did gladly. Now, what that does is that once you're splitting your money between your extended family and your nuclear family, is that the quality of life that the nuclear family lives is less than what they would have lived had all the money be going to them. Now, what that does is that after when someone is going to retire, probably they haven't done a lot of investments, which probably they would have done. Then there's a cycle. So my old man also comes in and, well, now it's your turn. So the conversations that I've been having with my siblings is that we should have these things stop with us, so that let our children not have to pay this black tax in quotes. And the best way to do that is to make sure that your retirement is in check. And that means that you have to plan well. You have to know that I have to put money away, because someone was telling me that you could retire at 60 and live up to 90. So do you have enough money to live 30 years? So those are the conversations that I'm having with my siblings. And what I'd also love everyone to have, that make sure that even as we're discussing the negativity of black tax, let us also discuss the aspect that we should not encourage it, we should not let it go to the next generation.
Ah, very well said. And even as we bring this conversation to a close and we hear Joanne's final remarks, let me hear from Edith and Chris. You've heard from George. Are these things that you're being intentional about in your own lives? Let me start with Edith.
Yes, I agree with George. For me, it is more empowering the people that are around you, empowering my siblings to understand that they also need to, bring something to the table, for example. Empowering my parents at home. I remember when I was still working and we would, my mom would, even our parents, they have their desires, they have goals, they have things that they would like to achieve, in as much as they might not be able to financially, but when you empower them, then they're able to stand on their own to a certain level. So we would do certain things for my mom. We would empower her projects so that even at the point where we are not able to, for example, send money immediately, she's still able to do certain things by herself. So empowering one another is very important. And I agree with George that it needs to stop with us. We need to also raise a generation that knows that we are supposed to pass wealth forward rather than sit back and wait for other people to give to us. So yes, that is something that I want to, or I'm working on implementing in my life as well, and those who are around me.
Okay, Chris?
I would differ a little in opinion from George and Edith, and this would be my take. If it is forced upon you, then that, yes, needs to stop. However, if I am in a position to be able to help, I think it's only fair and good that I do just that. And so I would be a proponent of striking a balance so that I do not neglect my own needs, my own immediate family, at the expense of my extended family. I do not do that which is outside my reach, which I cannot manage or afford. I'm doing it within my ability. If I can have a budget, a plan, and I have some funds to set aside to take care of these kinds of responsibilities, then I would do just that. And so I would be a proponent of a balance and not a total elimination of the sin. That's my take.
Okay, Joanne.
Support people to support themselves. Empower people so that they can run their own lives. And either way, because we are a society, no one can survive by themselves. So whichever way we look at it, from time to time, you'll be required to help. But not help from a point of incapacitation, but you're required to help from a point of, this is a need, and that someone needs to have a boost now. So either way we look at it as Africans, because we are very inclusive, we will not avoid helping. But still, let the people be empowered so that everyone takes care of themselves. For the firstborns, I would say you're not the only child of your parents. Involve other children to take care of your parents. And also empower the rest to take care of themselves so that when you know, for whatever reason, if you're incapacitated, they will be able to run their own lives. And then my third is, unless we break this now, we will still be so incapacitated at the point of our retirements that we will need to depend on our children to take care of us. And that will be propagating the same negativity of a generation. So we cut it now, then we are able to save the next generation, which learns to keep the other generation safe. And moving forward, Africa will be more safe to belong to each other, because it will not be a burden. It will be a point of fulfillment.
Very well said. Joanne Kirera, family therapist, George Kilibwa, blogger, and of course, Edith Orego, who is a food products distributor, and Chris Akwa, who is a HR consultant. Thank you for joining us on this conversation and being candid about your own journey with the black tax and, of course, as we call it, family responsibility. A lot of wisdom coming out of this conversation, and I see you talking to us on our social media, that hashtag new normal. Let that conversation go on, but remember, the ideal here is to have a healthy relationship within the family unit, and it calls for boundaries, and this is actually given life to by creating those boundaries from the get-go. Well, I'm told we still have some feedback from you. That hashtag new normal, let's have it. Have you ever felt pressured to provide for family members beyond your limits? Hassan Sharaf says, to a point of resilience. Okay, Sharaf. The detective raised back. Yes, I have felt pressure to provide for family members beyond my limits, but I had to explain to them my stance. Felix says, normal happenings, deputy parents, aka fastborns, understand it better. Felix, we hear you. Afar says, yes, that is the order of the day. Kiprotich Kip says, we fastborns understand this. Your dad, mom, and siblings become your own children. Yes, Kiprotich, we hear you. Duncan says, when I was young, I couldn't wait to become an adult, but paying bills wasn't part of a plan. Interesting. Kaigwa Martin says, this issue of black tax is very serious. I have faced it, and I simply don't like how relatives feel entitled that you must help. Help is voluntary and not forced. Kaigwa, Asante. Peter Wanjala says, filial responsibility is a cultural norm both in African or Confucian cultures. You have the responsibility as a person to take care of your parents when they grow old. Peter, Asante. Ishmael says, unless the family is rich, it's very difficult. Florence Karanja here with the last one for now. The measure you give, the measure you get. No excuses giving, but you should have self-control and be wise while giving. Florence Asante-san, and that actually sums up our conversation today. Thank you for making time for your world, and we shall see you tomorrow morning. Have a good day.
Presenting the new Harpic Bathroom Cleaner. Compared to ordinary detergents, its thick formulation gives you superior cleaning and kills 99.9% of germs and viruses all around the bathroom. Blue for the toilet and red for the bathroom.
The Kenya Film Commission presents the Kalasha International Film and TV Market Virtual Edition. Catch everything live on the 5th to the 7th of May from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Sponsored by Safaricom.
What do you think about Molfix?
Actually, another brand was recommended to me, but it had a leakage problem. Then I decided to try Molfix. His clothes don't get wet anymore.
Because Molfix provides extra protection against leakage thanks to its anti-leakage elastic barriers. All babies deserve a high-quality diaper. You should also try Molfix.
In the past few months, we've shown up for each other.
Over and over again.
And as we continue to navigate COVID-19,
we still need you to be there for each other.
By doing one simple thing. Wear a mask.
Even if you think you're low risk,
a mask will help protect you and others.
It's pretty simple. I wear a mask to protect my teammates,
myself, and you. So wear a mask to protect yourself and others. Let's stop coronavirus together.
We digitized more than 30 million single sheets of paper. Nairobi has about 250,000 transactable parcels. Those titles that are both in the Survey of Kenya, in the Cadastre, the Land Administration, Land Registration, and all the other departments of the Ministry.
So yes, the digitization of land registries, how much is it costing the taxpayer?
There are two titles, for example, covering the same parcel of land. The system will not allow you to upload them.
If you read the Public Finance Management Framework, one of the provisions is that counties will mobilize on-source revenue through land rates. And I can tell you county governments are really banking on this digitization.
Sisi kama Kogalo team, saa hii game yetu imeenda class. Tunataka players wetu wapewe koti, ama namna gani? Suit. Wapewe suti. Tuxedo. Ivo. Goalkeeper kwanza tunataka friji wekewe pale kando. Double door. Tunataka kishika ball anaenda kwa fridge anachukua.
Ball gani hawakujangi kufunga wanakuwa wamesinda huko goalkeeper.
To get Kogalo, dial *811*850#. Skiza na Nation.
Timeless love. I won't allow you to talk about Renata as if she was a piece of merchandise, even if she is your girlfriend.
Not my girlfriend, but my woman now. Renata has found in me the love and affection that you didn't know how to give her. And I have to tell you that she's very satisfied.
Shut up. I want you to get out of my ranch.
You're a loser who only knows how to take revenge. You have to be a moron to reject a woman who's like Renata. And that's why I spoil her and give her the caresses that you know nothing of.
Timeless love.
Well, thank you for your time. How juicy.
Juicy.
NTV Jioni, habari za kina, fasaha, tendeti na za kuaminika.
NTV, turning on your world. The following program has been rated GE. It is therefore suitable for general family viewing.
We clapped our hands and stomped our feet. Hi ho, hi ho, hi ho. A rig-a-tick-tick and away we go, away we go, away we go. A rig-a-tick-tick and away we go. Hi ho, hi ho, hi ho.
Hi guys, welcome to Generation 3. My name is Albi Kimani.